Let's dive right into this explainer. When we think of the world's absolute economic powerhouses, our minds usually jump straight to vast lands, massive oil reserves, or just endless mineral wealth. But Switzerland? They totally flipped the script. They built one of the wealthiest nations on Earth with, literally, virtually zero natural resources.
I mean, just imagine trying to build an economic empire when you can't mine a single ounce of coal, drill for oil, or harvest endless acres of cash crops. How do you actually get rich from scratch like that? It honestly sounds completely impossible, right?
Well, while most nations were busy getting rich by striking gold or striking oil, the Swiss took a massive, unprecedented gamble. They struck trust. They realized pretty early on that, okay, if we can't export physical raw materials, we're going to have to export intangibles. We're talking stability, precision, and an absolutely ironclad reputation.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the resource paradox, look at their history of neutrality, unpack the trust economy, dive into precision manufacturing, and wrap it all up with the modern Swiss economy.
All right, part 1, the resource paradox, building wealth from absolutely nothing. Basically, Switzerland started out with a really tough math problem. They had massive mountains, landlocked borders, and incredibly limited natural resources. So what did they do? They added a very specific variable to that equation, a heavily calculated gamble on impenetrable stability. They essentially decided to manufacture safety in a world that was pretty much constantly in turmoil. Which brings us to part 2, a history of neutrality. This was the strategic gamble that changed literally everything for them.
Now, after surviving some pretty devastating early conflicts, they achieved independence and made a definitive pivot. But listen, this was not just passive pacifism. No, this was armed neutrality. During the World Wars, they fortified those massive mountains, mandated conscription, and even, get this, wired their own infrastructure with explosives as a fierce military deterrent, all while refusing to actually take a side. And that sent a massive signal to the globe. No matter what is burning down on the outside, your assets are untouchable in here.
Okay, moving to part 3, the trust economy, how they became the bank of the world.
Banking is so heavily dominant in Switzerland that their total banking assets amount to a staggering 467% of their total GDP. Just wrap your head around that for a second. The assets locked in their banks are nearly 5 times the size of the entire country's yearly economic output. It's wild.
And to put a dollar figure on it, Swiss banks currently manage $2.4 trillion worth of foreign wealth. That's more than any other country in the world, making them the absolute, undisputed heavyweights of international wealth management.
And when we break down where all this wealth actually originates, we see massive inflows from nations like France, Germany, and Saudi Arabia. Why? Well, thanks to some incredibly strict banking secrecy laws established back in 1934, foreign powers and billionaires realized that Swiss vaults offered a level of legal discretion and security that was unmatched anywhere else on the globe.
In fact, this demand for safety is so absolute that it leads to something called negative interest rates. Think about it. Normally, a bank pays you to hold your cash, right? But in Switzerland, because global elites are just clamoring to park their money in francs to escape volatility, the banks can literally charge the wealthiest people on Earth a fee just for the privilege of keeping their money safe. Talk about flipping the dynamic.
Next up, part 4, precision manufacturing, taking things way beyond the vaults.
See, because they lacked raw materials, they couldn't exactly compete in bulk manufacturing. Importing heavy metals all the way over the Alps? Yeah, simply too expensive. So they focus purely on value-added precision. A tiny amount of imported steel becomes an absolute masterpiece when it's turned into a Swiss watch. A small chemical compound? That becomes immensely valuable as a specialized pharmaceutical. They built an entire industrial sector relying entirely on having the most precise, highly skilled labor in the room.
And finally, part 5, the modern Swiss economy. The utopian result of all this. All of this trust and precision translates directly into one of the most prosperous societies on Earth. By focusing on highly skilled labor and setting themselves up as the world's ultimate safe haven, Switzerland has engineered an economy characterized by an incredibly high quality of living, exceptionally low crime, and consistently low unemployment. It's like a finely tuned machine.
And to top the whole thing off, their pristine natural beauty attracts over 4 million tourists every single year. So not only do they have the world's wealth safely stored in their vaults and some of the most advanced factories on the planet, but they also have millions of people flocking to their borders just to spend money looking at their mountains and lakes. Not a bad setup, for sure.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. In a world that is completely obsessed with mining gold, drilling for oil, and fighting over physical land, Did Switzerland prove that the ultimate natural resource is simply being the one place on Earth that everyone can trust?